Hello, hello. How are you? Welcome back to Confident Business English. If you're a senior manager and you want to build your confidence with your English communication skills, you are absolutely in the right place. If this is the first time you're listening, let me introduce myself. My name is Anna. I'm a neurolanguage coach, and I work with senior managers from all over the world to help them feel more confident in the skills that matter most to them. Building confidence is important, but it's not the end goal. It's the vehicle that gets you there. But the end goal could be, for example, something that you might be thinking about, getting a new job, moving to a new country even, taking on more responsibilities, getting a better salary, or it could just be feeling more confident to speak up, being more visible within your organization, doing yourself justice, and feeling like the way that you're communicating matches your skills and expertise. Whatever it is, if that sounds like you and that resonates, I hope that you enjoy this podcast. This episode in particular is part of a series called the Confidence Sessions. I'll be doing these episodes until the 16th of September 2026, where I'm going to be starting a brand new season of Confident Business English. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you're a loyal listener, you're here every week, I hope that you enjoy this episode, which is going to be touching on something a little bit different. And if this is your first episode, you can definitely benefit from this. This is going to be kind of a grounding and a foundation in confidence. But if you want to go back and look at some of the technical episodes about vocabulary, frameworks, expressions that are very relevant in business English, then I highly recommend that you start from the most recent episodes and go backwards. You can also use the search tool, for example, on Spotify, and put in some keywords and see what episodes might come up, whether that's meetings, expressions, phrasal verbs. You can find the ones that you're most interested in there. On the agenda for today, then, I really want to go in depth in terms of what confidence actually is. You want more confidence. You want to build more confidence. You want to feel confident. It's quite a fluffy word. It's thrown around an awful lot. I would like us to try to pinpoint together what it actually is, and I hope you find this beneficial and that it gives you a perspective that you can take away. It is important to mention, though, before we go into this, is that you are different and everybody is different. You all have a different blueprint of life. You have different personality traits to my clients. You have different life experiences, which means that it's never a one-size-fits-all approach with confidence. However, there are some extremely useful things that we can take away from scientific studies and research that has been done in order to look at how confidence works and how to build it. In this episode today, and I think I'm probably going to continue this for a couple of episodes, we're going to be looking at a specific book, which has been on my shelf for several months now. This is not a promotion or an ad. It's something I bought and I've been coming back to time and time again to really read through. And, you know, when you read something once, but you kind of have to read it again. And every time you read it, you take away something different. Well, this book is by Robertson, and it's called How Confidence Works, The New Science of Self-Belief. I'm not saying that you need to read this book. If you're really inclined to do it, and this is a topic that you find very interesting, perhaps it could be a good read. But I'm going to take some of the key things that I've actually underlined, and I'm going to walk you through them. And I'm going to throw in some examples as well and some of my thoughts on it. The first question I want to pose to you then is, from your perspective, what is confidence? In the book, Robertson describes confidence in different ways. The first thing that I think is really interesting is he describes it as a bridge into the future. We don't know what's going to happen. The future is uncertain, and confidence propels us forward. It makes us take action, and this is a really important part. He argues in the first few chapters about historical and cultural moments that he argues would not have happened if people didn't have confidence. We can apply this, of course, in your context. When you're communicating in English, there's always an element of the unknown. You won't always know if a meeting or presentation is going to go exactly as you want it, or that you're going to go to a job interview that's in English and you're going to get that job. But you can have a level of confidence that makes you feel, yes, I can do it. and I will take action towards that. Rather than, for example, having a lot of anxiety, which really zaps the life out of taking action and it keeps you within this zone of comfort. And this can play out in many different ways. As I said, it depends on the person, but it could be things like not going to networking events because you don't feel confident to speak with people, not initiating small talk and conversation, or, just absolutely avoiding as much as you can speaking in English. So that's the key thing that he mentioned, is about confidence bringing action. He also goes on to talk about lots of phrases that are in the same family, let's say, but they're not the same thing. And sometimes they can get commonly confused. So I thought I'd break them down for you here. He talks about the fact that confidence is not optimism. Optimism is your outlook on the world, how you see things. You can be optimistic, but optimism doesn't necessarily propel you into doing things and taking action. And remember, that's what is important in the confidence element. Having confidence makes you do things. Confidence is also not self-esteem. And I think this is one part that can be a little bit tricky to separate sometimes. He describes it in a way that I think is really nice, which he says, self-esteem is a running total of how you view your self-worth. But it doesn't, again, propel you to take action. You can think very highly of yourself and you can really have a lot of worth for yourself and value yourself, but you might not necessarily feel confident doing something like giving a presentation in English. Does that make sense? Confidence is also not courage. Courage is being very afraid, but doing something anyway. It is part of the equation of taking action. It could be in a very big moment where you're really, really, really scared and you're just like, I just have to do it. And you muster the courage from somewhere. But in the long term, in order to keep facing these challenging situations, Robertson argues you really should focus on building your confidence. It could be, for example, that in one meeting, you have a very difficult and terrifying experience, and you really have to rely on your courage to get you through that situation. But rather than relying on every time it being, you're terrified and you really have to muster the courage from somewhere, if you can build up your confidence over time, you're going to move that needle so you won't have to rely on these big courageous acts to get yourself through it. The other points that really stood out to me as well that I wanted to share with you is he talks about confidence being built on a predictability system. Your brain is predicting how likely you are to be successful at any given task. That's where confidence is also task-based, and you can feel confident and less confident depending on the task that you're doing. And essentially, when you approach something like a task in English, at a basic level, it's thinking, well, have I done this before? Do I have any data I could use to predict if I'm going to be successful or not? If this is the first time you're ever doing something and you're doing it in English, it's likely that you're not going to feel very confident. You're going to have some self-doubt, which, by the way, is completely natural and you're a human being because you have nothing to base it on. But if you do something all the time in English, you're going to feel very confident because you've got all the data and evidence to back it up. You've done it so many times before and you were successful doing it that you're going to feel much more confident. No surprises there then. There could also be a lot of things that fit in the middle. For example, I have a lot of people say, okay, I never have to think about giving client presentations in my own language, but as soon as I do it in English, it really changes everything. And of course, there might be some confidence and data that you can take from the fact that, okay, I know what I want to say and I can say it in my own language. But as soon as you put it into English, you're changing the rules. There's a different variable that you have to work with. So your predictability machine is like, oh, I'm not sure about this. I don't know. I don't have anything to work on here, but I know that we've done it many times before. So you might go into that feeling a little bit more nervous than usual, but still with some confidence that you know what you want to say. Other examples of this, where you might suddenly feel like you lack confidence, is if you feel very comfortable giving a presentation one-to-one, but then all of a sudden you're asked to do it in front of a group. That's going to throw off the predictability system because we're like, okay, we've got something new to play with here. I'm not sure. That's where some of those doubts might creep in. Can I do it? And can I do it successfully? That's what your brain is asking you. If things were that simple, though, what you could argue is, okay, so if there's something I want to build confidence in, I'll just do it more. I'll take action, I'll do it more. And by doing it more and having repetition and iterations, I will build my confidence. And yes, that can be a really good strategy for a certain group of people. And this is where I would introduce two broad categories of senior managers that I work with. The first ones, I would say these are the quick fixers. They have a very specific area that they lack confidence in. Perhaps that's giving presentations, or it might be small talk. And once they have the tools and the vocabulary, they've practiced it, they've got some feedback from you as well to know if they're on the right track or not. They've gone through it in the sessions. They're ready to go. They're like, okay, I've addressed that and I'm ready to go. So it's a lack of confidence with a very specific skill, and that's arguably easier and quicker to fix. Then there is also another group of professionals which I've worked with, which I'm going to call the deep rooters. This is where rather than it's like I've got a set thing that I lack confidence with, and once I've got the tools, I'm good to go. It's more of a general lack of confidence overall with the language and most tasks, to a point where even though this is a task that perhaps they've actually been doing quite a lot in English, they still don't feel confident with it, which indicates that there is more with this group of people to do than just the action part. There's something more deep rooted that makes you feel like you can't do it that we want to try and address. This can be very different for everybody, and everybody has their own stories, but some of the things that come up a lot, and these are the things that I'm trained on as a coach, is to listen to people when they're speaking and to try to notice some of these things coming out when people are talking. First of all, it could be something which is called a bad learning memory. This could be when you were in university, somebody said, you have a terrible accent, or you're really bad at English. Actually, I don't think you'd ever really find a job in English, and you carry that with you. It could also be a very traumatic event, which could have happened at work. Perhaps you were very embarrassed in front of a group of people. Perhaps somebody made a comment about your English, or you were given very, very negative feedback that wasn't constructive, that really knocked your confidence. And again, this is something that you carry with you that you translate as being, I can't do it. It can also be, I believe, from my experience and what I've seen, certain people and situations that can trigger you, and this could be something to do with your past experience, that make you feel like you can't do it. And as soon as you're out of that dynamic or you're working with other people, you do have the confidence to do it. I think a good question to ask yourself, if you feel like this is the case, is if you took English completely out of the equation, what is going on in that situation or with that person that is affecting your confidence? Is there something else going on? So let's leave that episode there today then. I think it lays a really nice foundation for next week, where we're going to go into this in more detail. We'll look at the perfect combination that you need to build confidence. We'll also look at the power of wording, which is something that this book goes into, and also about challenges, how to create the right challenges in order to build your confidence and not actually send you on a path backwards. And I think it really does help you to understand what confidence is, since this is something that you are spending a lot of your time trying to get. All right, thanks so much as always for listening. It was a pleasure to be here with you. I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.